Hello everyone, my name is Heather, and in today's video I'm going to tell you all about my very first cruise. Okay, first of all I have to tell you that I have always loved the ocean, and yet I live in the middle of the United States in the upper Midwest. We do have the Great Lakes near us, which are very much like great inland seas. They really are. They're a lot like the ocean, but they're freshwater. But otherwise, it's a long way for us to get to the ocean. But I love the ocean, and I am fascinated by ships and nautical things. I just love all of that. I'm a big fan of lighthouses. I've always really loved being out in boats and ships on the sea. I even was very strongly considering, when I was in my late teens, early 20s, joining the Coast Guard. And I even spent some time talking to some of the guys at the Coast Guard station up north of us on Lake Superior, pretty seriously about wanting to join the Coast Guard. So I've always loved the ocean. I've always loved traveling by sea. I really wanted to go on a cruise when I was in my late teens and early 20s. I could not find anybody who wanted to go on a cruise with me. I even got one of my friends to go with me one time to the travel agency downtown where we live and look very seriously at booking a cruise on the Big Red Boat. Does anybody remember the Big Red Boat? So this would have been like late 80s, early 1990s, okay? I think I was about 21, 22 years old at the time. And I took her and was looking very seriously at booking the Big Red Boat. And this was kind of Disney's getting into their own cruise line. So this was attached to, they didn't own the ships, I don't think. And it wasn't like Disney Cruise Line is today. I can't remember who exactly ran or owned the Big Red Boat. If anybody knows, leave it in the comments. But it was kind of a combination. You got to go to Disney World and then you got to take a cruise on the Big Red Boat. And that's what we were looking at booking. And I was really excited about it, but she decided she didn't want to do it. So I didn't get to go. So I had a problem in that I couldn't get anybody to go with me on a cruise or try it. I don't think cruising was anywhere near as popular as it is today. And people just weren't interested in it or thought it was going to be dumb or weird or whatever. I had my son Andrew. I was a single mom when I had him. I was 24 years old and I was a teacher. I was a high school teacher, and the year that we went on our cruise, I was between jobs that summer. So I had some time off, if you will. I didn't have anything going on that summer. I didn't know where I was going to be working in the fall. I was trying to find a new job. Andrew was 4 years old. His whole life, he had spent a lot of time in daycare because I had been finishing my second bachelor's degree in education when he was little, a baby and everything. And then I had been teaching and working all the time in a fairly distant town. I had a pretty long commute. He was in daycare a lot, and we didn't get to spend a lot of time together. Now, at this point, Disney Cruise Line had started. Their first ship, the Disney Magic, which was the first ship that we went on and was our very first cruise, had launched in July 1998. So at this point, it was very new. So I decided I have some time off. I don't have anything going on. I want to spend some time with Andrew. He and I had never really taken a vacation together. We had traveled quite a bit, but always with my dad. My dad and me and my son Andrew had taken several trips together, but always like land-based road trip type vacations. Or we, flew somewhere else in the United States. Andrew and I had never gone on a trip together. I decided that I was going to go ahead and book a 7-night Eastern Caribbean cruise on the Disney Magic for Andrew and me. And so our very first cruise was on Disney Cruise Line's very first ship. The Disney Magic, as I said, had been launched in July of 1998, and we took our cruise on it over the 4th of July of 2001. So the ship was actually just under 3 years old at the time we went on it. The Wonder came out in 1999, so the Wonder was out there too, but I chose to go on the Magic. But the ship was still very new and very, very nice. Now, they have kept up the Disney Magic and the Disney Wonder very well. My last cruise on Disney Cruise Line was actually on the Disney Magic in March of 2023, and I will link the playlist from that cruise for you at the end of this video. I wanted to go on the Magic again to give my kids, my other two kids, Megan and Ben, the opportunity to go on the Magic because they had never been on it. I few things have changed on the Magic between that first cruise and the last one I took, which were 22 years apart. Is that right? Yeah, 22 years apart on the same ship. And I'll come back to that. Okay, so when Andrew and I went on this, it was a 7-night Eastern Caribbean. We left from Port Canaveral. I remember that we went to St. Martin, St. Thomas. I don't think Castaway Cay existed yet, I'm pretty sure, because we did not go there. I think we might have stopped in Nassau. I think we did a shore excursion at all of our port stops. I'm pretty sure. It was very, very hot at the time because it was July in the Caribbean. I had never been to the Caribbean before. Neither had Andrew, of course. I'd been to the Bahamas with my dad when I was like 15, 16 years old, but we flew directly to the Bahamas. We didn't go there on a ship. So this was my first experience taking a cruise. It was my first time going to the Caribbean at all. The room that we got was on deck 2. It was an ocean view stateroom. So it had a porthole, a great big porthole that faced outside, and you could look outside, but you can't open the window. And there was no balcony. I'm gonna link this video up here for you where I talk about what Ben and I, my other son, and I thought of our ocean view stateroom on the Disney Wonder when we took it out of San Diego in 2022. So you can find out some more information about what we thought of that type of room. I am pretty sure the reason I booked an ocean view stateroom instead of a balcony was, well, obviously I had no experience cruising, and so I didn't have anything to compare it to. But I'm probably thinking that I knew I didn't want an inside. I wanted to be able to see outside, but I was probably being kind of budget conscious. I was a single mom with a young child. I was between jobs. I was probably trying to not spend too much money. The other thing I'm wondering, I don't remember this, but I kind of wonder if another reason that I chose an ocean view stateroom instead of a balcony is because I was a single mom with a preschooler. And, you know, he could kind of climb and get into things and stuff like that. And maybe I was being a little bit safety conscious and didn't want to worry about him getting out, climbing up on the balcony railing or something like that. So I'm not sure if that's what I was thinking, but that makes sense. I remember that our stateroom was very, very quiet. We did not hear anything, even though the deck above us has restaurants and stuff and the main atrium and the guest services and all that. I don't remember hearing any sound from above us. I think we were about midship. It was very, very quiet, and we were very comfortable in that room. We had early seating dining, so it must have been 5:30, something like that, and we were table sharing, and the families that they put us with were 2 couples, married couples, but they each had one child who was the same age as Andrew. I don't remember their names or where they were from, but one, they had a little boy, and he was 4 or 5 years old as well. And the other family had a little girl, and she was the same age too. So the 3 kids actually got along really well and kind of enjoyed talking to each other and running around and stuff like that. And then us parents got to talk to each other and chat. So that was kind of nice because we were all about the same age and had children the same age. So I think Disney did that on purpose. We were at a table, I remember, all the way in the back of the restaurant, closest to the stern. Andrew did have a little trouble when we were in those restaurants feeling a little bit seasick, but then I would just give him some bread or they would bring him some apples, green apples, and then he was fine. So you do feel some motion and vibration from the engines in those 2 restaurants at the back of the ship on any Disney ship that you're on. The restaurants at the time, the 3 rotational restaurants on Disney Magic, were different than they are now. At the time, it was still Lumiere's and it was still Animator's Palette. Those 2 are still the same. But the 3rd restaurant was Parrot Cay, and it was a Caribbean-themed restaurant. And something neat back then that they don't do anymore was everybody had a character breakfast at some point during your cruise in Parrot Cay. And you were assigned a particular day. This is the day you get your character breakfast. It was included, but they divided it up on different days so that everybody got a chance, and that was held in Parrot Cay. And I remember it was very similar to the type of character breakfast experience you have at Chef Mickey's at the Contemporary Resort at Walt Disney World. So, with the swinging the napkins around and stuff like that, same kind of colorful thing, and same basic characters, like the Fab Five kind of characters. Don't remember exactly who was there, but, Mickey, Minnie, probably, I think Donald, Goofy, Pluto, maybe the Chipmunks. I'm not sure. But that was cool. And your waiters told you the night before, so you knew. And I think it was probably also on your schedule somehow. But there was no apps or anything back then. I don't even think I had a cell phone. They told us the night before, tomorrow is your character breakfast, so make sure you're in here at this time for your character breakfast. So that was kind of cool, but they don't have that anymore. That restaurant has gone through 2 reimaginings since then. The one in the middle, I cannot remember the name of it, Carioca's. And it was like Argentinian or something. It was like a South American themed restaurant, and I don't think that did very well at all. And that's why in a recent video that I made, which I'll link up here, talking about the new Disney Treasure, a lot of people in the chat during that Disney Treasure announcement had asked why they aren't doing Encanto as a restaurant. And I said that I didn't think the food for a South American theming, because Encanto takes place in Colombia, would go over very well. And this is part of the reason I think that, because that restaurant Carioca's that they had on the Disney Magic there did not last very long at all. It didn't do very well. And then they rethemed it again, and now it's Rapunzel's Royal Table, which we enjoyed very much on our last cruise on the Disney Magic. I do not remember what the shows were in the main theater. I know that they were different shows than they have now, at least 2 of them. I want to say there was Aladdin, maybe Toy Story. They might have had Disney Dream or Believe or Wish, one of those, and then something else. I don't remember what they were, but they were different shows than they have now. There were a few changes to the main lobby, the atrium on the Disney Magic, and I realized that when we were on it this last time, but it was only when Lily, the crew member who was giving us our Art of the Theme tour that Megan and I went on, she pointed out what was different. There used to be 2 sets of stairs in the Disney Magic. I don't know if that was true on the Wonder too. Does anybody know? Did anybody go on the Wonder early in its cruising career? Were there 2 staircases in that atrium too? Because I didn't go on the Wonder until 2004 was my first time on the Disney Wonder. So several years later, and I think it always only had 1 staircase. Maybe. It definitely only had 1 staircase when we went on it again in 2017. So if there were 2 in 2004, I don't remember. But if there were, they got rid of the second one there before 2017. And then they moved the Mickey statue on the Disney Magic from the center of the steps in front of Lumiere's to the right side. And I think they've replaced the carpet. I know they replaced the chandelier. They replaced the chandeliers in both the Wonder and the Magic between the first time I was on each of them and the second time I was on each of them. And then if there were other changes, sometimes they retheme like the lounges and things like that. I'm sure things got refurbished in between. The cabins, the staterooms, have really basically stayed the same. Every time I've been on the Disney Magic or the Disney Wonder, they have had the same decor and everything like that. I think they have redone the bedding a couple times. Yeah, I remember when we went on the Magic in 2001, they were bedspreads. Do you remember bedspreads? They were actual bedspreads, and I think the beds were different. I'm not sure if they split. Does anyone know? They were different beds. I know at some point they replaced the beds on both the Magic and the Wonder and got the kind that they have now. Okay, so that was all about the cruise. Now what I'm gonna do is tell you the 3 best and 3 worst things about that cruise. That first cruise that I ever took on Disney Magic with my son Andrew when he was 4 in 2001. This is something that I started doing 4 cruises ago when I was on the Disney Wonder with my son Ben for a Halloween on the High Seas cruise last October. And I've done it for every cruise since then. But I realized I never did this type of video after my previous cruises. And actually, there were only 2 cruises before that were after I started my YouTube channel. We went on Royal Caribbean's Mariner of the Seas in 2018, and we went on Royal Caribbean's Harmony of the Seas in 2022. I am going to make videos about those and all the other cruises I've been on prior to that, including this one, and let you know what the 3 best and 3 worst things were about each of those cruises, because I thought those might interest you, because People do seem to like those videos where I kind of sum up the good and the bad of each cruise. You can expect those videos to come, and if you want to make sure you don't miss any of those, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel and click on the notification bell so you get a notification every time I put out a new video. And remember, subscribing is free. It does not cost you anything. Okay, so now that you've heard all about what that cruise was like, let me tell you what I came up with for the 3 best and 3 worst things of our cruise on the Disney Magic in July of 2001. Okay, when it was only 3 years old, my very first cruise, Andrew's very first cruise as well. Okay, first the 3 best things. The first thing I would say was the novelty of our first cruise. Tell me if you agree with this. I feel like there's nothing as great as your first cruise. Like, I feel like your first cruise tends to almost, for everyone, be the best cruise you ever go on, and tends to kind of be your favorite and have a special place in your heart. And I was just so excited to finally get to go on a cruise. Really was happy with everything about it. I was very impressed with the ship. I was very impressed with the service. I liked everything about it. Andrew did really well. As I mentioned previously, he was used to going to daycare all the time. He would go into the kids club no problem. He loved it in there. The only time they had to page me to come get him was one time he wanted to go back to the room so he could take a nap. That was it. Otherwise, he was very happy in there. Oh, the kids clubs were very different than they are now on Disney Magic. So I had an opportunity to do things like go to the spa. I got to do a behind the scenes tour in the Walt Disney Theater one day. That was really cool. We got to go backstage, see how they do everything and the costumes and stuff. I got to go to like a panel thing of the officers on the ship where they answered questions, which was really cool. Quite a few things that they don't have anymore, actually. But I got to do adult things while Andrew was enjoying himself in the kids club. So, I mean, it just overall was a really positive experience for our first cruise, and it's definitely what got me hooked on cruising. Okay, the second best thing about our cruise was I discovered that cruising is a really great vacation for a single mom or a single parent of any kind, or a solo adult traveling on your own with kids. And there's a couple reasons for that, especially on Disney Cruise Line. This was true, given Andrew's age. One is it's really safe. You're on a confined, defined space of the ship. It's really basically impossible to fall off a cruise ship unless you're doing something really foolish. It's kind of like a little city, and you learn where everything is really quickly, and there's so many people there to help you. The service was so wonderful, and the staff and the crew on Disney Cruise Line are so incredibly good with little kids. And so they just doted on Andrew, and they were really great with him. He loved our serving staff and everything. He loved the adults that worked in the kids club. Everything about it was just really great. And it was a very easy vacation for me. It was a wonderful vacation for me and Andrew because it was pretty stress-free. Everything was kind of taken care of for me. I mean, I just discovered that cruising is a really terrific vacation for a single or solo parent. And I've talked before on my channel about how I also feel like cruising is a really good value because you get your accommodations, your dining, your entertainment, and your activities all together in one price. I don't drink alcohol, so I'm not paying for alcohol. I don't drink coffee, so I'm not paying for specialty coffees. So the only real extra cost for us on that was our shore excursions. I think I bought a photo package and the gratuities. That was it. Otherwise, it was all in one price. The third best thing about our cruise on Disney Magic in 2001 was I really did a good job on my first try of choosing the right ship and the right itinerary. And I've talked about this in my videos before many times. It's very important that you choose a ship and a cruise line that fit your personality. And I was already a huge Disney fan. My kids are huge Disney fans. We like the classic elegance of the Disney ships. We like the amount of Disney-ness that is on it. We really like the premium level of service and stuff that you get with Disney Cruise Line. So I did a very good job of choosing the right cruise line for our first cruise. The other thing I would say is that I probably chose the right ship, although I don't think it would have mattered If I had chosen the Magic or the Wonder, I think we would have been happy with either one. I happen to love both of those ships very much and have been on both of them multiple times. I also chose a really good itinerary, I think. I definitely prefer Eastern Caribbean itineraries over Western Caribbean itineraries. I've done both. I don't particularly care for the ports in the Western Caribbean, and I don't think it's as scenic. I find that the Eastern Caribbean is just really beautiful. And like I said, I had never been there before. The water is so pretty, and the kind of mountainous terrain of the islands that you go to. And it's just really, really lovely and pretty. And I also like that you usually get more sea days on an Eastern Caribbean itinerary than you do on a Western Caribbean itinerary. I think I particularly liked that the ports that we went to were pretty easy or comfortable for taking young kids. Like, for example, on St. Martin, I remember we went to the Butterfly House, and there was some kind of tour, and they were really good with kids on that tour. And then in St. Thomas, which is part of the U.S. Virgin Islands, I felt pretty safe and comfortable on the shore excursion we did there because, again, that's technically part of the United States. And I don't remember what we did in Nassau. I think we did some kind of tour too. And again, I felt very comfortable and safe at the time. Nassau has gotten a little sketchier since then, but at the time I remember feeling it was like really good. So I definitely did a good job of picking the right cruise line, the right ship, and the right itinerary for us for our first cruise. Okay, now let's talk about the 3 worst things about my very first cruise. The number 1 worst thing, and I've talked about this before too, is it was very hot. We don't do well with the heat, none of us. I was much younger and thinner and fitter at that time and could easily carry Andrew and everything. I mean, I was only 28 years old. Funny story, on the bus, the shuttle bus from the airport, the Orlando International Airport, which freaky, on that cruise, I just realized we flew down the day of our cruise, which I don't recommend. But we flew down the day of our cruise and we got on the Disney Cruise Line shuttle bus from the airport to the port, and they went around to hand paperwork. They went around to hand paperwork to the parents. They were only giving it to one parent from each family, and they went right past me, and they didn't give me anything. And I had to say, excuse me, I need the paperwork. And they're like, oh, sorry, miss, this is only for the adults. And I was like, I am the adult. So, I mean, I know I still look young for my age. Now I'm 51, but at the time I was 28 and apparently looked like a teenager, and they thought Andrew was my little brother. That actually happened a lot when we were that age. We would go places like with my parents, and they would think my parents were our parents and Andrew was my much younger brother. It happened all the time. So anyway, that was kind of funny, but the heat was difficult. It was very, very hot, especially in the ports. I know even Andrew got, he'd get kind of red in the face and sweaty and stuff. We did do tours, and I think every time we were on some kind of bus that took us there, but I feel like I don't even think the buses were air conditioned. I don't remember, but it was hot when we were in the ports. On the ship, we were fine, because ships have air conditioning. I don't remember ever being uncomfortably hot on the ship, but the hot weather in the ports was challenging. Okay, the second worst thing about this was actually kind of those shore excursions. And what I mean by that was there was a lot of driving and a lot of time in the bus. And Andrew was always my kiddo that got the most car sick. I don't think he never got sick, but he wasn't thrilled about how much time we had to spend on those buses. And in hindsight, I probably would have chosen different shore excursions for us, but I was really curious about the islands and wanted to see them. And then also when we were off the bus, I think especially in St. Martin and St. Thomas, it was very hot. And Andrew was tired and I had to carry him quite a bit. And so I remember just being kind of hot and tired. So I don't know if I just didn't know what to pick. I'm sure I probably didn't. But it was a little bit challenging on the shore excursions just because of the heat and that I didn't know what to pick. So the third worst thing was Andrew getting car sick, seasick, and he also got soot in his eye from the ship's funnel. On sail away, he got soot in his eye from the ship's funnel because of where we were standing, I guess, and just the wind. And I had to take him to the ship health center. So my very first cruise, I got experience going to the ship's health center, but they were very, very nice. They cleaned out Andrew's eye and the doctor examined it very carefully and he was very good with them. I mean, I'm sure the doctors and nurses on Disney Cruise Line are terrific with kids. He was fine. It didn't damage his eye or anything. It was just kind of uncomfortable. 1 or 2 days later, this I was very impressed with. The doctor called our stateroom to check on him and make sure that he was okay. And, to make sure we didn't need anything else. And we were not charged for that visit to health services at all because they considered it the ship's fault. So, the ship hurt my child. And so they just took care of it for us. So that was really neat. But that was a couple little negative, health things for Andrew that, they weren't a big deal, but honestly, that's the worst thing I could think of from this cruise. I mean, we really didn't have any negative experiences at all, other than that and being a little hot or whatever, So it was a very, very positive first cruise experience. And as I said, definitely got me hooked on cruising. So there you go. Those were the 3 best and 3 worst things about my very first cruise, which was on Disney Cruise Line's Disney Magic in July 2001, 22 years ago, over 22 years ago. I really loved that first cruise. We had an absolutely fabulous time. It was a terrific vacation for a single mom like me. And I highly recommend it. If you can afford it, I love Disney Cruise Line. I've loved Disney Cruise Line since that very first cruise, and I still feel the same way about it now. And my kids now are basically in their 20s. So, it was a great first cruise experience. I will say, though, that having my first cruise experience on Disney Cruise Line kind of spoiled me. And you'll hear other people say this as well. The service is just so good. And when you get to go on a cruise like that for your very first cruise, everything I've gone on since, we've had some really great cruise experiences on other cruise lines, but they all kind of pale in comparison. So be aware, if you choose Disney Cruise Line and you feel about it like I do, you might be just a little bit disappointed with every cruise you go on after that. You'll still have a great time on other cruise lines, but we always kind of feel that way. It's not quite Disney. So that's just something to be aware of. Okay, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it helpful and informative. If you did, please be sure to give me a thumbs up down below. And again, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. Have a great day, everyone, and safe travels.